伤了面子的感觉。
A couple days ago, I watched a video by Matt Pottinger, who is a national security advisor of some sort with the Trump administration. And he speaks Chinese, he speaks Mandarin pretty well. I was impressed. And I wasn't impressed with what he was saying or the way he was putting it out. He's taking advantage of what he's done is he's speaking directly to the Chinese people from the platform of the podium of the White House, which I question, what would we think if somebody from the Chinese central government spoke English to and gave a message to the American people. I just kind of question if that's really the right thing for us to do, but it's been done, and it's through the Trump administration. And I've given a few talks. I've done a few videos in Mandarin to respond to his talks to the Chinese people, where he's gotten a lot of views. Obviously, anybody who's speaking from the White House in Mandarin is going to get a lot of views. So that's impressive. But I support a different way of doing things than what he's talking about. After having lived in China for over 20 years, speaking fluent Mandarin, I interact with the Chinese people, and they think I'm Chinese. I mean, it's like there's a whole difference here. Yeah, he spent 7 years in China. He was a journalist, apparently. That's great, but I think that you get only a very narrow perspective of the Chinese culture through that. You're not actually interacting with the people on a daily basis in a way of you're involved with their lives, you're involved with their business, their challenges, the friendships are there that, like myself, when I was managing companies in China, managing companies, working for companies in Beijing, including Corning Glass, and involved with the diplomatic back and forth that was happening between the U.S. Side and the Chinese side, involved with the communications, translation, interpretation, and learning through that experience about all of the differences between our countries and the way we see things and the way we respond and react. And so it's through that, and then also through understanding the Chinese traditional culture and thought, which is very much a basis of who the Chinese are today. Their culture is based on Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism, which is very different from a culture that has basic values and morals based on Christianity and the Bible. And so that right there gives us very different worldviews that we're working from. And so I feel that the best way for us to approach China in the best way to get the most out of our relationship is to do it in a positive way. And the Trump administration has not done that. They've been doing things from a more aggressive perspective, but I think that we can gain a lot more by changing our attitudes. And I think that Joe Biden has that ability, and I think he also has that experience. So I'm really hoping that the Biden administration will change their approach to China. And so after I gave my messages in Chinese, and some Chinese people were listening to them, a scholar friend of mine responded and said, "Oh, hey, read the 64th Gua in the I Ching." The I Ching, I don't know if you know what the I Ching is. It's the one with all of the 64 not holograms, but there's certain grams. I don't know the English words for all of this stuff, I'm sorry. But so I went back and I read it, and it basically talks about what happens when we go into challenges. And then how it is that each of the Chinese, there's 2 trigrams that make up the larger gram, which is 6. And the top trigram is is fire, and the bottom trigram is water. And so this gram is made up of water and fire. And so when you flip it, then you get a different gua, which is water on the bottom and fire on the top. Water on the bottom and fire on the top, which is the 63rd gram, it's basically talking about economics and success and all of this, and we're striving for all of that. But what happens in the I Ching is when you reach a certain point, you get to a point where you've gone too far, then that flips over. And so what happens is that we go from the 63rd and it flips to the 64th. Now, how I see this is that Trump administration was the 63rd. They were pushing the economics, they were pushing the success, they were pushing America first, all of these things, to the point that it went over, and so now we're flipping over to the 64th, which is going to be the Biden administration. And what the 64th allows for us to do is to approach things from a more well-balanced perspective, to approach things from a perspective that brings into consideration finding a balance in things. Because what happens is basically you've gone from rich to poor, in putting it very simply for what the two are representing. So you're going from rich, and then you're pushing it too far, and then you lose it, right? You go into the poor, into the challenging situation. So a lot of people look at the 64th as a challenging time, and it is a challenging time, and I believe we're going into a challenging time. But what's important is that we use that as an opportunity. And so that's by being wise, by making good choices, and by not pushing things overboard. And I think the relationship between the U.S. and China is an important aspect that needs to be taken into consideration in this time. And I hope that the Biden administration will do a good job by finding people who have the skill sets, the ability, the language, and the cultural knowledge, interacting with and working with the Chinese, ability to do all of these things to help make the right responses and the right decisions. Because a lot of times from our American perspectives, we tend to react in ways that actually does more harm when working with the Chinese. When we are able to change ourselves and do things from a different perspective, sometimes maybe a little bit more relaxed than what we may want to do, just a little more friendly, we'll get so far with the Chinese. We'll get a lot more further, because that's something that speaks to them, and that's something that they relate well with, and that's something that will bring us to a point of being able to have more normalized relations with China, which we can only gain from. So I just wanted to respond to all of my Chinese videos and my perception and my perspective on Matt Pottinger and what he's saying to the Chinese people, and also how I feel that the Trump administration has not done the best in establishing good relations with China. And I hope that the Biden administration will take us forward into finding more normalized relations with China and finding the people that will help to be able to guide us through that task. Thank you, and I appreciate your watching.